So first off, those are great looking mobile trucks, the Lightship trucks. And as I was doing research, I was like, oh, that's a neat like vehicle and kind of captures a part of what you provide
Yep.
in clinical trials. So maybe let's start there. What are those trucks for?
Awesome. Well, it's a great place to dive in. We think about clinical trials. We act as a site, um, and those trials are mobile research units where they're listed on a 1572 if you want to get technical about it. But they're sites. They're extensions of sites, and we take them anywhere to go meet patients. And that's what we're about. We're about getting access to all patients for clinical trials.
And where can we see these trucks? Where are they today?
They're all over the US. So we have 12. They are right now, they're in California, Texas, Florida, Tri-State, and I think that is it. Yeah. So, but what we do is we park them up in locations. So we go into communities, generally underserved communities, don't have a hospital nearby. We put them in car parks. We put them in pharmacy car parks. We put them, if we're doing for example, a Lyme disease study, we go and park them in a remote car park where people park their cars before they go for a walk and get eaten by ticks. So, wherever we need to go to find patients and serve patients to be on clinical trials.
Mhm. Now it seems like you founded this company
Mm.
simultaneously with raising capital. Is that
Mm.
how it happened?
It is exactly how it happened. Yep.
And maybe give us a little bit of how that came about, because your background, it seems, was in corporate as well
Yep.
as in consulting.
Yep. Absolutely. I mean, it's an interesting journey. I should say we founded the company with three great other partners, and we all brought different skill sets. So Tom Pike came from the big CRO industry, as did I. Alon is a serial entrepreneur and founder, and Alon really brought the expertise of how to engage venture firms. And it's been a really interesting journey, right? I think going from big corporate to sitting in a room with two people thinking, what do we do? And how do we build this business has been an incredible journey. And I think I would say two things about raising and building. First of all, go with your gut. Like, you don't need to be an expert if you've got something that is going to make a difference. Venture funds are really interested in that. And secondly, it's not just about the money. It's all about the partnership, because there's a lot of ups, a lot of downs, and a lot of stuff in between. And money, sometimes hard to come by, sometimes easier to come by depending on the market. But great partners, and I've been very fortunate in that, great partners who are there for the journey is probably the one bit of advice I'd give anyone. And I would have given myself 5-6 years ago when we started this, for sure.
So how's it going today? Can you give us a sense for the scale of the business? And you can choose to use whatever metrics you're comfortable sharing.
Yeah, we think of the metrics as the number of patients' lives that we touch. So when we started, we had nothing. Today, we've touched over 20,000 patients' lives in terms of visits, enrollment, and getting them onto studies. So it's 20,000 patients. I would say 95% of those patients would not have been on a clinical trial because they lived in the wrong location previously. So, if you put it in those numbers, you've maybe got 18,000 people who are on clinical trials today through Lightship that would never have been on a clinical trial before. And that's the main metric we use. Now, you can then, if you're an investor, you can then defer how much do you get per patient on a study, how many visits do you do, all that sort of stuff, and you can get to the revenue numbers. And we're private, so we don't share that. But our key metric is really all about patients. How many patients' lives are we impacting? And today, it's over 20,000, and about 18,000, 19,000 of those would not have had access if it wasn't for Lightship.
And are you on pace with how you kind of planned out scaling the business?
Well, let's think back 5 years ago, 6 years ago when we started, it was just before COVID. And so if you draw a straight line from there to where we are today, we're probably slightly ahead. If you take the craziness of the COVID times, you reproject and you refocus, and there's lots of ups and downs in between. So I would say, are we happy with where we are? Yeah. And I think the main reason for that is we always set out to grow 2 times minimum a year, and no more than 4 or 5 times at the top end. And the reason for that is we're delivering clinical trials, right? We're delivering visits. We're drawing bloods, we're capturing vitals, we're capturing data. And I think my concern always was rapid growth puts a risk on quality. And quality is central to what we do. And if you think of, a big client of ours, top 5 pharmaceutical company, also an investor in the business, they're running, I don't know, maybe 100 trials. If we mess up on one of them, we'll never work with them again. And so that measured growth, focus on quality, number one issue is how do we ensure patient safety, means that we always had relatively sensible growth plans. And I come back to what's great about our investors, right? Our investors bought that message, believe in that message, and have supported in that message when probably we could have grown quicker. And they've encouraged us to stick to our core values of ensuring patient safety and getting access for patients.
And, you have a long background and deep background in the healthcare space. How did you come about choosing this specific problem area to solve?
I spent a lot of time with senior leaders in healthcare, in particular when I was at Ernst & Young. And of course, everyone's mindful of cost and how do you manage cost. And there was a constant structure of a conversation with finance teams is, hey, how can we reduce cost in commercial? How can we reduce cost in doing this? And then when the R&D leaders would come into the room, they would say, hey, if I give you $50 million more, can you get this trial back on track and you get it done quicker? And I thought it was a really curious anomaly, right? I know everyone knows the cost of delayed trials or the cost of failed trials and all that stuff, but to see that as a conversation made me think, okay, if one could solve that challenge of getting trials done faster, getting trials back on track, reaching patients quicker, completing, having less people drop out. We have 96% of our patients stay on our studies, which is an incredible completion rate. Your last patient out data comes quicker. And by doing that, you're getting the data back to the pharma companies. So you're solving a real need. And that's where we started. So this is something that's got to be addressed. The fact that less than 10% of the population can access trials today seems crazy. We're all chasing after the same types of patients. How do we expand that? And that's the sort of the journey of, how do you solve the problem for patients? And by doing that, you solve the problem for pharma and biotech companies.
And help me understand. So if the majority of populations in, given areas are in the cities, a much smaller fraction are in these like underserved areas, but you're going after those areas. Is it because like they provide, another piece to the puzzle of, whether or not the drug would work, with these other populations or, is it also that just numbers game? You need more people.
It's both. I mean, I think we focus on creating access for patients who wouldn't traditionally have access. So we can come back to what that subset is. But also you just need more people on clinical trials today, right? So it is both. I think if you think of a city, I mean, let's take Los Angeles and then we'll take New York, right? So to give you 2 examples. So in Los Angeles, one of the burdens on people participating is travel time, not travel distance, right? So, if you've got to sit in traffic for 2 hours in the middle of the day and there and back, and you're trying to earn a living, if you work in a big company and you've got a great office job or you're a CEO, you could probably do that. But if you're in the lower quartile economically, socially, economically, then you can't do that. And so you can't participate, which brings me on to the target audience of the correlation between a lower socioeconomic quartile and access to trials is shocking and frankly a disgrace. And so that's what we're addressing. We're saying, look, these people, even if they're getting referred onto trials, and they may not be because their physician is not aware of the trial, they may sign up for it, but they never complete the study because it's just too much of a burden on them. And then there is a correlation factor of lower socioeconomic and people of color in the United States. And as we know, populations of color have been massively underrepresented in clinical trials as well. And so by addressing, again, the same problem, the structural problem with it's not about necessarily having access to it or finding out about it. It's about, can you participate over 3 years on this trial, because you're having to give up days of work and not getting paid or risk getting fired. That's the problem we're solving for.
How have you found that transition from consulting corporate to being the CEO of a startup?
Very mixed. Would I do it again? I think I probably would, but it's been really tough. If you saw a picture of me 6 years ago, I looked an awful lot younger. I even had some hair at that point. Everyone says it's harder than you could possibly imagine, and it is incredibly hard. It's also incredibly rewarding. And I think, come back to the patient piece, changing the lives of 20,000 patients makes it worthwhile. And I have learned so much, so much from great mentors. My board are incredible, having people like Michael O'Darcy around me. So it's a real shift. I mean, I didn't know quite how difficult the shift was going to be until I did it. And I think if I'd known how difficult it was going to be, I might not have done it. But having done it, I wouldn't change it for the world.